For more on Brazil's presidential election, let's welcome Christopher Garman, Eurasia Group Managing Director for the Americas. He joins us from our Sao Paulo bureau. Christopher, such a tight race. I mean, give us a sense on how tight it really is.
Yeah, and listen, it looks like we have two very strong candidates, most likely headed towards a second-round runoff. The vote is this Sunday, but the recent developments have shown that the conservative candidate, Jair Bolsonaro, has had somewhat of a surge over the course of this week. What votes currently project is that he has close to anywhere from 33 to 35% of the vote, which translates to about 40% of the valid vote. The leftist candidate, Fernando Haddad from the Workers' Party, is about 10, 11 percentage points down. But when you conduct second-round simulations, presuming that you actually have a runoff between the two, which is highly likely, the two are statistically tied. In some polls, Bolsonaro is ahead by 2 points. Others, they're tied, or Fernando Haddad is ahead by 1 or 2. But it really is a dead heat when looking at the second-round runoff. But in our view, we do think that Bolsonaro does have an edge in an eventual second-round runoff.
What's the trade here? Do we get a bounce for Brazil bonds and perhaps even for the real if Bolsonaro wins, for example?
Yeah, we've already seen a lot of price action over the course of this week, right? Last week, what the polls were showing was that the PT's candidate, Fernando Haddad, was ahead by anywhere from 4 to 6 points, according to the most reputable pollsters. And then what we had is a really interesting phenomenon, which over the weekend we had very large demonstrations against him on Saturday. And then we had on Sunday the counter-mobilization supporting him. This created a highly polarized environment. And then to voters, it crystallized that this is going to boil down to a choice between Bolsonaro on the one hand and the PT on the other. And then the anti-PT sentiment came out in a much more meaningful way, in a way that it wasn't being manifested in the polls. And Bolsonaro started to pull ahead. And that deficit in the second-round simulations evened, and some polls showed Bolsonaro ahead, and markets rallied on that, on the expectation of his victory. And even a lot of chatter that maybe he could get 50% of all the votes this Sunday and win in the first round without the need for a second-round runoff. And so I think a lot of the rallies that we've seen in the stock market and the currency is a bit on the expectation not only of a victory but potentially of a surprise victory on Sunday. We think it's unlikely, but you can't rule it out entirely. What we may have, and this is what folks are doubting, is whether or not the supporters of other candidates, third-party candidates, may migrate to Bolsonaro early.
And Christopher, just obviously most of the attention has, with respect to Bolsonaro, is now focused on his stabbing at that election-related event. But at the end of the day, this is someone who has talked a lot about privatization. Is it ultimately a choice between improving the economy through efforts like that as opposed to more government spending, which seems to be the other big push as part of this campaign?
Yeah, I think that really, obviously from a financial markets point of view, that's what institutional investors are looking for in terms of the platforms. But from an electoral and voter point of view, what this election really is about is a sentiment of changing the way politics is done in Brasilia. There's a huge disenchantment with leaders and parties, and what Bolsonaro represents is kind of an anti-establishment sentiment. He has no ties to the major parties. He's strong on the issue of corruption. He's strong on the issue of security, and so the vote is more about that than by his economic agenda per se, right? And in the PT, it's let's make Brazil happy again.